Hi, and welcome to this State of Search Tools Week presentation demo. In this video we are looking at Majestic SEO, who are presenting their tool in honor of State of Search Tools Week. Find more on the Tools Week on stateofsearch.com/tools. Now for Majestic SEO, it is DIxon Jones who will be presenting the product.
Thanks, Baz, for the introduction. What I'm going to do today is go through a few bits of the background principles of Majestic SEO and show you a few bits of the tool. I'm going to present it as if you were a silver account holder. So a silver account holder is the sort of lowest paid element. There's different pricing plans, and so that's £30 a month, or in euros that comes to, what is it, 39 euros a month, something like that. Just so you've got an idea, this isn't a piece of software that costs thousands and thousands of pounds. It's relatively cheap. So what Majestic does, for those that don't know, is we crawl the web every day, just like any other search engine. We have a very interesting way of crawling. We use distributed crawlers around the world, so unlike Bing or some other search engines you might have heard of, we are crawling from several different countries at once. And that sometimes gives us a different interpretation of the internet. But what we do, instead of looking at just the on-page information, we keep the link relationships between websites. And when I say links, relationships between websites is really quite important. And I'm going to talk about relationships a little bit, because the way in which we work out the value of any URL is based on the relationship of an individual URL compared to all the other URLs on the internet universe, so to speak. So let's go and have a quick look at a website, the NHS. The NHS is the UK's health service, and it's a pretty big website. And this is what we call Site Explorer. So Site Explorer is a very quick way of finding out information about any website, any URL, or any domain or subdomain. So there's quite a lot of information that you can find on Site Explorer without even having to dig into the important tools or the deeper tools within Majestic SEO. Now, I don't have any privileged access to the NHS. Our crawlers crawl the whole of the web. I've just chosen this particular website because I want to do something a little bit later, showing you something about penguin, and we're going to have a look at a little site on hemorrhoids, and then we get a pretty good idea of what happens between a good website and a bad website. So you can really use this to have a look at any website or any URL on the internet. It doesn't have to be one that you are have connections with. So for the NHS, this is a summary screen. We know of about 4.5 million backlinks that we've seen in the last 90 days to the NHS. And they come from about 53 different referring websites. And we break that information down by how many of them are educational, how many of them are government, how many are in images, and that sort of thing. We have two indexes. One is a fresh index and one is a historic index. I would urge you not to use the historic index unless you know why you're using the historic index. I'm going to concentrate on the fresh index today. The fresh index includes all the information that we've seen in the last 90 days. Whether that link has been around for 1 year or for 1 month, we should have that information. The other information that we've got on this top screen above the fold is this link profile. And I want to explain a little bit about our flow metrics. So we have two metrics that we show: citation flow and trust flow. These are both scores between 0 and 100, and they're a very good representation of the value of a URL. And they're much, much cleverer than just counting how many links are going to a particular website or URL. What they do is they flow information through lots and lots of different layers. So if you go away from the internet for a second and you say, okay, Alan goes and talks about Bill, and Bill goes and talks about Charlie, and Charlie goes and talks about Denise, then Denise and her profile is to a certain extent influenced by Alan at the start of that chain. Because he said something good or bad, that will reflect around the world, and Denise's influence is affected. So that idea of 6 degrees of freedom, where everybody knows everybody else in the world, applies to the web universe as well. So if you take any link away on the internet, that changes the balance of power along the internet, just perceptibly, a tiny little amount. And so it might or might not have an effect on the flow metrics. So what we do is we flow this information through lots and lots of layers. And that's why we find that our flow metrics are really, really interesting, because it's not about how many links go to an individual page, it's about the influence of all those links. And the difference between citation flow and trust flow is that citation flow flows link volume through the internet, or link equity through the internet, whereas trust flow flows a subset of that information. It flows information about websites that we know humans go to through the internet. So if we've got we have got a set of hundreds of thousands of websites that have been peer reviewed, that we know people go and see, and it may be that they have very small amounts of traffic or very large amounts of traffic, but the point is they're trustworthy. And so when that information flows, it gives slightly different interpretation to the citation flow, which is just about link volume. Now this is quite interesting because in a large website, you would imagine, because it uses the same maths, that citation flow and trust flow should converge to the same number for any URL in a random situation. And for this site, the whole of the NHS, that's happened. So we've got a very, very similar number between citation flow and trust flow. When we get a big distortion between citation flow and trust flow, then that suggests an unnatural link behavior. This little chart here is a representation of the links, and because we've got, in this particular chart, 4.5 million links, we plot all of those 4.5 million links on this chart of 101, actually 0 to 100 by 101 pixels, and where it gets dark, we see where there's a high concentration of links within a certain band. So for most websites, there tends to be this flame up here. Interestingly, we're going to see what happens when the link goes wrong in a little bit. But I wanted to explain this summary screen a bit more first. On the summary screen, we then have that top line information. We have some quick graphs on when the links were brought in and when links came into the website. We have a quick summary information of the top links that are coming into the website. So we think dh.gov.uk. Let me just close this Skype here. I apologise. And then we also have a distribution of anchor text. And this is a quick summary screen. So now we could go to any one of these tabs and get some more information. So if we wanted to see the top domains that link to the NHS, for example, we can click on here, and now we have a list. We think that 2 Prentice Road Surgery, Chesterfield Royal.nhs, Elsley Park Medical Centre, these are all websites that are pretty much government websites of surgeries in the UK. Mumsnet is in here as well, which is a very popular site in the UK. And for each of those, we tell you how many links are coming in, and then we tell you the citation flow and trust flow of all of those websites. Bear in mind we have citation flow and trust flow at domain level and at URL level, and actually we have it at anchor text level as well. So we can see at the top list of websites that are linking in. So if you wanted to go and find all the websites that are influencing the NHS, you could do worse than starting at this list of domains, and you could download them to CSV, or you could say, I'm very interested, and press on this button here. Now this button here adds Elsley Park Medical Centre to your bucket, and what this is doing, you can go quickly through different links, just click on the ones that are interesting to you and add them to a bucket. And you can have a look at your bucket list up in this top right hand corner here, and if you've got a bucket list, you can then go and have a quick look at the sites in your bucket list. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 items in my bucket list at the moment. I've got the Elsley Park Medical Centre, which I've just put in, and I actually want to remove that. And then I've got the NHS itself and hemorrhoidstreatmentblog.com, and then an internal page of the NHS as well. Now, the reason I wanted to talk about this particular affliction, so to speak, is that I wanted to show you the difference between a website that is doing well in the search engines. So if you type in hemorrhoid treatment, this page on the NHS comes up first. And if you have a look at some of the data that Google has been putting out, they've said that this particular site here is currently penalized in Google. So if we go and have a look at this particular website in our Site Explorer, then here's something interesting that happens. You saw before a nice big flame, but what happens when you've got a site that is obviously penalized or has obviously been doing some really interesting things, then you certainly have a big differential, or tend to have a big differential between the citation flow, which is the link equity, which says there's lots and lots of links coming into this website, relatively speaking, although it's not in the millions, but it's in the thousands, but a big disparity between the citation flow and the trust flow. And that results in a rather limp-looking flame here that goes out towards the side. So when we see this flame, this pretty much suggests that things have not been natural in the way in which you've been building up links. So that's a good example of where a site, I think, has some challenges, shall we say. Right, now what I want to go and do is have a look at some of these sites. I'm now on this particular site. Let's go and have a look at these backlinks, which is from an unusual domain. So we've got all of the links coming in for this one are, we've got Prairie Tales, we've got a list here of all the links coming in, and for each link we've got information about the anchor text that's there, and we've got information about the trust flow and citation flow of all the individual links. So it looks like these sites have got very good trusts that are coming in, but there's a big disparity between the citation flow and trust flow of a lot of these links, and that can be a real problem or a real flag for the search engines. Okay, I'm going to go back to the NHS now. And then I'm going to show you a little bit about links coming in and links going out, because for a lot of SEOs, once you've got over some of your penguin problems, trying to see where good links are coming from and where bad links are coming from is pretty useful. And this is where the new and lost links information can come in. So now we can see on the nhs.co.uk where new links are coming in day by day. And this data is updated pretty much every day. In fact, it's updated several times an hour on certain parts of our data. But we've got information here about the links that we saw back on the 4th of March, so it's only a couple of days ago. And you can drag over a little area here and say, right, what happened in this spike of link acquisitions? Where did these links come from? And they've come from plus.pcmaster.ca, and they're using a lot of anchor text in here, even though it's the NHS. And these are quite good links coming in, all from one website. And then we can also, at the same time, have a look at links that are lost day by day as well. So this takes information about when we've been losing links. So within all of our links, we have a link type here, and of course these are all lost links, so they've all got a red mark down here. So for every link on our website, we tell you when we first saw it, when we last saw it live, and then if it's dead, we'll give you the date in which we lost the link. So new and lost links, and then anchor text. Let's have a look at the NHS and get a pretty good idea of the kind of anchor text around the NHS. And we've got some interesting stuff, things like asthma, back pain, stroke, diabetes, NHS website. This is not a site that has any need to optimize for particular keywords. Particularly, it's not their business model. So I find it quite an interesting website to look at, because we've still got some interesting anchor text here that is clearly about things that the NHS website will be about. Right, how am I doing on my time? Okay, I've got about 5 minutes or so. So what I'm going to do is show you a little bit more about a couple of the other things that we've got here. We do record information about where all of the links are coming from visually. So the NHS is a very UK-centric site, so a lot of websites are coming in through from the UK. For any website, of course, we get things from the States, but it would appear that the Scandinavians have some interest in us as well, and even a few people down in Italy. Oh, no top level domains in Italy, but we have got some information coming out of that looks like Switzerland to me. Okay, so that's the top level information. Now, if we go back to our bucket, then we can start seeing a lot of other little reports that we've got and tools that we've got that can take the information a lot further. And quite often it's very easy to start tracking information using the buckets here. You can also see our tools up here, and we have a list of different tools. The Site Explorer is the one I've just shown you. We've got keyword checkers, backlinks, click hunters, all sorts of other bits and pieces. But we've brought most of those tools into this bucket area now. So as you go along and you start adding sites into the bucket, then you can start running our tools and operations quite quickly on this information. If you want to add more onto the bucket, you can do so here, and you can also upload files as well. So if you've got a bunch of data, then that's great. So let's say you wanted to quickly go and have a look at the quality of a bunch of URLs on the internet. Our bulk backlink checker does that. So we could then go to a bulk backlink checker, and now you could, in theory, have put hundreds of URLs in this list. And now we've got some information about the trust flow and citation flow of all of these different URLs very quickly. So if you are in the habit, for example, of going and finding out a page rank of individual pages, that's a very difficult thing to do. You can find page rank. It's getting increasingly difficult, but you've got to go and do it individually. We have a different metric. We think that it's quite a good metric. We actually think it's better in many ways than PageRank. You can go and find hundreds of URLs and find the citation flow and trust flow within a second, and then you can download this information to CSV. Another tool that we've got that I think is probably the most popular tool that people have is this one, which is our Site Explorer tool. This message is coming up here just to warn me that I've got a URL and a domain at the same time. The backlink history tool checks domains only and will show you how those links have happened over time. So here we've got all of the link acquisitions over time, and we're going to have one big site and one small site. So on this particular example, the NHS is just going to kill everything. So if I start putting this information into a cumulative mode, this data is all free, and it's a very good way of quickly having a look at a website and how it fits within an industry sector. Because if it's collecting a lot more links than others in its sector, then it may be very, very hard for, if it's collecting links a lot slower than others in its sector, then it may be very, very hard for it to get any kind of traction within the industry. Okay. And then what I wanted to just show you lastly, before we start taking some questions, is one of the things about why the hemorrhoidstreatmentblog.com may have been penalized by Google compared to a site that does rank well for the phrase hemorrhoids treatment. So the NHS internal page about hemorrhoids, I thought I'd choose that one. I don't know if that was a good idea or not. Actually ranks very, very well on the search engines, whereas this particular one doesn't. So we can actually compare the link profiles of both in one picture. Sometimes this doesn't come out too well, but we can see that the NHS, that individual page within the NHS, has very, very few links. They would be in green if you could see it. Whereas the hemorrhoids treatment blog has lots and lots of links going into it, but at a very, very low level. So even though the hemorrhoids page on the NHS has very, very few external links coming into it, a couple of things are happening. The first is it's getting some link equity from the homepage of the NHS itself. So our flow metrics, although we don't report on internal links within our tool, we do our calculations based on internal link data as well. So we know that the NHS's internal page has a better trust than the hemorrhoids treatment blog. So if we have a look at the NHS Trust individual page, we believe that that's got a citation flow of 25. A trust flow is less of 17. That's a lot less than the homepage of the NHS, of course, which is up in the 70s. But the trust flow of 17 is considerably more than the alternative, which was the hemorrhoids treatment blog, where we found a citation flow way up in 39, but a trust flow way down at 11. And the disparity there causes some area for some cause for concern. So we did feel anyway that the internal NHS page was stronger than the hemorrhoids blog treatment blog domain, but it's a disparity that I think is very interesting. There's a lot of other things that you can do with the system. This button here, Create Report, is really where you start to take data to the next level. And I haven't really got time to go through it, but that will then collect all the information about the links that we have, and that allows you to start sorting and sifting. So if you wanted to go and see all the links that come in from a particular domain, or you want to sort everything by certain keywords in anchor text, then you could do that. And those reports are really pretty powerful. You can also, from here, build a tracking report, which is in beta. And a tracking report will take these citation and flow metrics day by day and the top level information day by day and start tracking them for you and start recording that information for you within My Reports up here. And My Reports is where you start collecting your information, and as long as you maintain a paid account within here, then we would start tracking the information about your reports. So this is what's happened to Majestic SEO's own data over the last few months, for example, where I've been tracking information. I can see that our trust flow and our citation flow has been more or less static. We've actually been reducing our citation flow, but our trust flow has stayed constant. Other sites go up and down like a yo-yo in this kind of report. So, ladies and gentlemen, I think I've already done my 25 minutes, and I'm going to go out here now and ask Baz whether any questions have come in and whether anyone's got any questions, and take it from there. Baz?
Yes, thank you, DIxon. That was really interesting. I could have listened to more of that actually. We have a couple of questions in the chat as well as a couple of questions on my notebook, because I've written down a couple of questions for you, and I'd like to start with one of my own, if that's okay,
Sure.
and then go into the questions of the other ones. You were talking about a lot about the quality of links, and you can measure the quality of the links here. Now, what you see a lot with people who are, let's say, less experienced in SEO, there's still the discussion, and even with people who are more experienced actually, about quality of links versus the quantity of links. So is it better to get as much links as possible, or is it better to get the good links? I think what you are showing here is exactly the answer to that. Is that correct?
Well, that's what we've tried to establish. So, and I think, you know, thinking about individuals is quite a good analogy. So, Baz, you're quite influential on the internet, and you know that makes you influential, you know, an influential person. The interesting thing is you're not very influential. Sorry, you're not very influential when it comes to pregnancy, for example, because you haven't got any personal relationship with it.
I've got 3 kids.
You've got 3 kids, yeah, but you're not a doctor, you know.
No.
So you've got the same value as everybody else. But within the context of search, you know, you're very influential. So when you talk about search metrics or Majestic SEO or Lindex, then that's great if then those people then talk about somebody else within the industry, and then somebody else talks about somebody else within the industry. It's going to have an influence, and it's going to have an effect way down the line, and not just a link, a physical link between site A and site B. A conversation in a pub will still affect the influence of individuals around the world, and that also has the same effect on the influence of URLs around the world. So you can easily, in marketing terms, you could easily distribute 2 million leaflets to every home in London, and say, right, I've now touched 2 million homes with 4 people in every home. I've now touched 8 million people. Of course, that's not as relevant as a marketing campaign that sits there and says, right, I'm going to go and talk to the 10 people that go on the number 8 bus in the morning. And it's much more specific. However, if any old person goes and talks to the 8 people in the number 8 bus, then you know that person's seen as dubious. Whereas if it's a bus conductor or for the bus company, for example, they have influence there. So it's not about the number of links. Information does flow, and what's kind of interesting about this algorithm is that you could actually flow all sorts of information down here. So if you had, for example, a list of websites that you knew were being run by criminals, and then you flowed that information through the link structure, then you would have some concept of how likely a URL is of being affected by, at least tainted by criminals, for example. So you could take a lot of different metrics and flow through, and ultimately it doesn't matter how many people you've got as friends. It matters how influential they are within your niche.
So that's probably one of the reasons. Correct me if I'm wrong, but you were talking about relationships between sites and not links between sites. So that's probably why.
Yeah. I mean, I'd like that sort of conversation to sort of develop and people start talking about relationships rather than links. Because, we've got a bit hung up on links.
Now, if you look at Majestic, if you look at the data you just showed here, another interesting aspect comes to mind, which is that a lot of people have trouble explaining some of this reach implications to managers.
Yeah.
And TV advertising is a good example of that. You just do a TV ad and you hope that as many people see it, but you don't have any clue of how influential the people who are seeing it actually are. When it comes to the web, does Majestic SEO answer that question for managers? Is this something you can show to managers and say, look, this is what we're actually doing?
On the internet anyway, we're using links over several different layers. So the concept that we're all connected to everybody else within 6 degrees of freedom, that idea emanates to the web as well. So actually, these numbers do really highlight that for you, and you don't have to go back and do all the maths. You sometimes have to explain to the manager that this is what the maths says, and whether they go to sleep or not at that point, I can't really say. But I think it does show that the butterfly effect. It really does show that if a butterfly in China flaps its wings, it can cause a tsunami on the west coast. And this concept just runs through.
Okay.
And this measures it.
Yeah. I'm going to go into a couple of questions from the audience. Try to talk in a mic, by the way.
Okay.
The first question is from Gavin Smith, and he asked a question actually during your presentation already. When you were looking at the world map, you showed a world map, and his question was: I take it that the map of links is based upon the host server location. Is that true?
Now, that's actually a very good, astute question there, Gavin. It's true. This map here, which we have for everything, is based on the host locations of all of the links that are coming in. However, what we have done, which is hopefully coming out initially in France, our French ambassador, Francois Goublet, you can sort of track him down on Twitter. He's doing some research, which I think is coming out on the French web, which is based on the top 1,000 websites that are hosted in France, as opposed to all of the links that are coming in. And so for that, we had to map out and find the top 1,000 websites according to our data, according to our Majestic Million data, which you may have heard of. And so we had to go and do IP lookups on all of those. We actually left the program running and left it up overnight. So by the next morning, we'd actually got the top 150,000 websites and where they're hosted in the world. So hopefully in a week or so, I'll be able to give that information out to people as to where all the websites are hosted in the world, based on starting with the strongest in the world, so the Twitters and the Googles of this world. And then by the time we get down to, I think I'm going to give out around about 100,000. We should be able to give that out in Creative Commons next week.
You are sitting on tons of data, aren't you?
We do. We actually have done this before, where we've given information out. So we have in our tools another little tool called Majestic Million. I don't know if my screen's still on.
Yes.
But here we have the Majestic Million. So this information is actually downloadable. There is a way to go and see all of the top 1 million websites. That's quite a big CSV file if you want it. But we give it away under Creative Commons. If you wanted to go and have a look at an individual website, as long as it ends up in the top 1 million, you're there. Then this will give information about where you rank in the world. So you're currently ranking 88,000 in the world and 45,000 in the .com genre. So what we've been able to do here is, instead of having the top TLDs by just the top TLDs, we're going to be giving it away based on the country of their hosting. But the links that are coming in the map are, it's where the links are hosted.
Yeah. Okay. There actually is, but I'll share that later. There is a Majestic Billion page on state of search where it's updated constantly with the which SEO blogs are the most linked to.
Yeah, that's it, which is a cool page.
Yeah,
So maybe you can,
I'll share that one as well with the.
just check it's still working. We haven't broken it since
No, it's still
since we
working.
put
Yes,
it up. Okay.
it is still working. So another question Gavin asked, and that's an interesting one actually as well, because when you started talking, you mentioned the fresh index and the historic index, and you said only use the
Yep.
historic one when you know what you're doing.
Yep.
What Gavin asks is what type of task would you do, and then actually use the historic index for?
Sure. Sure. There's two main tasks that you would use historic for. Firstly, if you're tracking the link velocity, how quickly links came in over a long period of time, which is done in the site in the backlink history chart. So we default to historical information there. So if we're going to go and have a look at the BBC.co.uk versus CNN.com and a whole load of others, then you can compare those. Obviously, that's interesting to see what happens over time, and it makes for a much more interesting graph. You can change this around to what's happened in the last 90 days, but it's kind of nice to see what's happened. So it's kind of useful for seeing, for example, people that have got banned in the past. People like JCPenney had a bit of a problem, and I think Overstock, a number of sites that are big. You can still go back and have a look at what happened when those sites suddenly created huge amounts of links, for example. Now, the thing about the historic index is that we don't take deleted links out of the information in any of our data. In fact, we just flag them as deleted. So what tends to happen is that inexperienced people will go and say, okay, I want to go and get the highest number that I possibly can. So instead of saying that the BBC has 1.38 million links coming into the website, they look at this number and say, and this will flip to the historic information and say, I want this number of 1.8 million. That's not to say that these are all live links. The vast majority of links that were around 5 years ago are now gone, deleted, have passed their best, have passed their prime. So it's useful to see when they arrive, but this data doesn't necessarily show you when they all got killed. However, when you're doing a penguin analysis and you're really looking for the dross links, then it does help to go and have a look at some of the historical information if you can't find the information in the fresh index. Sometimes there's links that are just so old that are still out there, and you can get some other information from that data.
So it's analysis purposes. That's why what it's useful for.
Yeah, and historical. It's like a big archive. It's you're pretty much going into a library and having a look in the basement, and that's okay. But how to calculate pi to 50 decimal places, you would do it a different way now than the way you did it 100 years ago.
Okay.
Use a
Thank you. So next question is from Ned Poulter, and he's asking something which I had also written down because, or at least part of it. Majestic is known not just for the product Majestic itself, but as being a product which is used by many of the other tools as well, through API access, I think, or how. The question Nat asks is, what is the API access like? For example, can this information be pulled through Google Docs fairly easily? And I'll ask his follow-up question after that. So could you tell us a little bit about the API? So how's that arranged?
So we've got several different versions of the API, and all the commands you can go and find all the commands at developer-support.majesticSEO.com. Now, by default, you don't have access in a silver account to the API. The API does cut in. If you've got a platinum account, you've got access to pretty much all of the API information, but you don't have a license to resell it. So people like Raven Tools, LinkDex, Analytics SEO, and Cavario and BrightEdge and all these guys that are using the data, they have a license to build applications where they can sell the data and add value to the data and move on. What you can't do, or rather, you probably could, but we'd soon enough send you some cease and desist, is you can't just take all that data and then sell it as your own. You can use it within your own information, within your own tools, as long as there's not a web-based system where you can sit there and start tracking everything and selling data on. Then you can certainly use it for your consultancy and that sort of thing. In between, we've got two different other types of data. We've got what we call a light API, and the light API will give you the trust flow and citation flow and the link counts of any URL that you tell us, and a bulk. You could tell us, 1,000 URLs, and we give you that information back again. And that's not expensive. You can use that within a Platinum account for third-party systems. If you want to use it and you want to use it to help promote us, then talk to us on support, and we'd be happy to discuss that with you. And domainers use that quite a lot to very quickly analyze the difference between a good site and a bad site in domain catching. And then on top of that, we have a system called Open Apps. And people that are using Open Apps are people like SEO Gadget, Excel tools, tools for Excel. We also have our own plugin down here. So here's a Chrome plugin which is coming out and is in development, and so we can just see a particular site right from your browser. Already live, if you use Chrome, is the same information in Chrome. We've got a Chrome browser plugin. They use Open Apps, and Open Apps is very easy. We are more than happy for you guys to use Open Apps, because what that does is it allows you to connect other people's accounts up into your tool, and then you're not using your data allowances, you're using the user's data allowances, so it all kind of works out, and it's not costing us a lot in resources because the end user is paying for the actual pool of resources. So if you want to use Open Apps, that's the cheap way to build tools with all the functionality, but it's different to the Raven tools and the word tracks as well.
I think the Open Apps would be what an app would be looking for if he's talking about pulling information through Google Docs, for example.
Yeah, yes. So and people have. So again, Francois has built a few Google Docs that are pulling in information. I think as well, Seer Interactors have just done some stuff. Actually, Seer Interactive isn't pulling in Open Apps API at the moment, so that means that you've got to have a full API account to be able to use their data, which means you've got to have a Platinum account, which kind of is why we've developed Open Apps, so you can do it. With Open Apps, a Silver account can start using any tool that's built by any developer.
Okay. So Nat also asks when does this become available in terms of subscription level? That is almost what you just answered, but it's actually a step towards the next question. What different pricing do you offer? You have the open, the Open Apps you were just talking about. You have different levels, lighter, light, heavier. So what are the plans and pricing?
Okay, so we do have a free account. A free account, you can start getting reports on your own data. At the moment, we don't give you Site Explorer within free for your own data, but you can get full reports. You can see all of your own backlinks and that sort of thing. And there's a lot of other tools. So just signing up, you'll get significantly more information than if you're trying to look at our website without being registered at all. Most businesses can work quite happily with the Silver account. You get quite a lot of information. You can use Site Explorer something like 10 or 20 times an hour for different domains an hour. You can collect deep reports. It only starts becoming a problem if you need to start looking at all of the backlinks to CNN.com, for example, because those are the kind of reports that are very heavy on our CPU to generate for you, and so we do limit the amount of length you can get in the report. So I think with Silver, we tend to link things to something like 7,500. There's lots of detail about these. Yeah. So a standard report would be limited to 7,500 URLs in a Silver report, 15,000 URLs in a Gold report, which is £100 a month. Let me flip this over to euros for you. So 129 euros, 130 euros a month. And then the API, the main API cuts in at 300 euros a month. And that's the API for non-resale use. You get at that point also access to Open Apps API, and you can use that for everything. And that's Open Apps developer part of API. So you can start using apps that people have developed right back on the silver account. Then we have bigger accounts. It's just a case of volume, how much data you're pulling after that point. So if you wanted more than our 300 euro option, just click on this button over here, and for double that amount you get 3 times as much data, and then we go up to a Majestic 1000 as we call it, and then it sort of goes up in blocks of 1,000. If you want to build a proper, fully fledged application that is built on top of our data, then you're really looking at a completely different licensing and service level, and those are really sort of £5,000 a month kind of accounts. So you're not going to be able to do that unless you actually have a proper business model and you know how you're going to make money out of it.
That's a good answer. I gather that that's what the tools who are using the well-known tools who are using your product.
I mean, I would say most of the well-known tools out there are using our data. One of the things that's good about our data is we get it from first principles, so we're not going around and scraping just other people's data. We obey robots.txt. We've gone out of our way to try and be as legitimate as you can be within the industry. Given that you're saying you're crawling the web page, you can start anywhere in the issues.
I've got a couple of questions related to what we're doing in Tools Week. We're trying to put ourselves into the seats of those who want to purchase a product and look at, is this a product that I could use, yes or no? 2 questions related to that. The first one is, what is an average Majestic SEO user? Is there even an average Majestic SEO user?
I wouldn't say, well, it depends on your definition of average. I'll go for a median just to mess it up. I think typically a Majestic SEO user at the moment works in an SEO agency, or is a full-time in-house SEO, or does that as a large part of their job. They typically are on a silver package and are using that to see what's happening not only to their own websites but to other websites in the industry, and they're dipping in and out of it on a regular basis. Hopefully from our point of view every day. We'd like people to come and see our data on a regular basis. So they would consider themselves, generally paid users would consider themselves SEO professionals. Moving forward, there are other types of people. The affiliate industry uses it, for example, because you can use this data to start analyzing all of the affiliate links going to a particular website as well. Domainers use this information because you can very, very quickly work out how valuable any domain is based on its link history. We think in 2013 there will be other kinds of people that are using our data for risk assessment, for analyzing other information about websites, and we'll have to see how far that data goes.
Okay. The second question in relation to this is that people want to know where does a tool stand compared to other tools. If they are looking at purchasing tools, in what kind of list should Majestic show up? So between what other tools should Majestic be there?
Okay, we very much see ourselves as the custodians of the links. So many tools, most tools I would say, aggregate different types of data. So other tools would tend to have rank checking information, for example. We don't have rank checking information, we never have. So we just analyze the web and look at the links. So if you want an all-in-one tool, we wouldn't be appropriate, but you would be worried, or at least have to think through why a tool that is claimed to be an aggregate tool isn't using our data. So I would say that we're very much a vertical. So the data, the interesting thing is that although there's a lot of tools that display link information, there's very few that actually collect it from the ground up. So ourselves, Ahrefs and Open Site Explorer, the part of SEO mods, but not the other bits of SEO mods. They all crawl the web. I assume they all do. Certainly we do in very generic circumstances. So I would say you put ourselves up with those two.
Okay, so those would be your competitors, so to say.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you. I think that was really interesting. Looking at the.
So Baz, are we going to give everybody that's coming to the webinar a free trial?
Absolutely. How could I say no to that?
So if anybody doesn't want us to send them an email with a free month or first month free of Silver, then let Baz know. Otherwise, we'll send you an invitation out so you can have your first month of Majestic free of charge.
Excellent. We'll do that. So is there a last thing you would like to say to those attending or listening or watching the video afterwards?
Well, I'll tell you what, thank you very much for getting through to the end of it. I really appreciate that. I know sometimes I'm an R, but hopefully the information is useful.
It was very much. People can find you on MajesticSEO.com, and you are, of course, all around conferences. Is there another way people can find you?
Yeah, conferences are pretty good. I'm in San Jose next week. I'm also in Paris next week. I'm going to New York the week after. It's pretty much if there's a big conference, either I or somebody from Majestic SEO will be there. For some reason, it seems to be me an awful lot. You can also find me on Twitter. It's at DIxon_Jones. Or if you want to just get the Majestic data, then it's at Majestic SEO. You can also find our blog is the best place for seeing new announcements, unless it's already been broken by State of Search first, and that's at blog.majesticseo.com.
Thank you very much, DIxon Jones of Majestic SEO.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
This video is part of the State of Search Tools Week. You can find more videos on stateofsearch.com/tools, demos and presentations of tools like search metrics, link research tools, analytics SEO, Majestic SEO, and LinkDex.